Everything Marvel is about to do hinges on the Fantastic Four First Steps film. And here's why. Fantastic Four is Marvel's first family. They were first introduced in 1961, written by Stan Lee and illustrated by the wonderful Jack Kirby. Since their publication in comics, they've also appeared in multiple animated series, video games, and movies. So the first movie that the Fantastic Four were in was a 1994 film titled Fantastic Four or The Fantastic Four that was actually never released, and you can watch it on YouTube. So if you literally just go and type on YouTube Fantastic Four 1994 movie, you can go and watch it. And it's a trip of campy fun with ridiculous costumes and some pretty great dialogue as well. After that film, we obviously got the 2005 Fantastic Four movie with the cast that most people identify live-action Fantastic Four with. So you have like Ian Griffith, or however you say his last name. I'm so sorry, sir. I struggle with this. You have Chris Evans as Human Torch, of course. You have Jessica Alba as the Invisible Woman, and you have Michael Chiklis as the Thing. Really, honestly, pretty fun picks for the cast overall. I still hold that thought today. I think that they kind of work, and I've recently watched both the Fantastic Four 2005 and the Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer back to back just a couple weeks ago, right after the New Year. Actually, it might have been New Year's Day. Can't remember. It doesn't matter. The point being, I watched both of those movies. They get some things right. They get a lot wrong. But the things that they get right are things that I do believe to be core to those characters and their characterizations. Rita's smart, borderline narcissistic, has a really difficult time connecting with others on an emotional level. Only thinks with his head. Johnny is hot-headed. He is quick to anger. He is a loose cannon. Typical Johnny Storm, Human Torch things, right? The Thing, it has a hard exterior with a soft interior. And you see that manifested through some relational things that he goes through, losing a fiance and then ultimately meeting a new woman who doesn't care a thing about the way he looks. And it's like a nice, very touching kind of subplot deal that they do there. And then Sue, I struggle with this one a little bit. And the reason being, it has nothing to do with Jessica Alba, actually. It has everything to do with the way that they wrote Sue Storm. I don't think that they gave her much to do except for just be the woman that loves Reed and is just harping on having his affection given to her when he's not really able to reciprocate because he quite literally isn't able to per his hyper-intelligence thing. Eventually they figure it out, it works, but they don't give her much to do beyond that in either movie. They do kind of give her a little more to do in Rise of Silver Surfer. A lot of the interactions with the Surfer hinge on her connection with him and talking with him and being able to sort of connect with him on a human level that empathizes with the fact that he's lost people, her telling him that they're about to lose people if he goes through with all of this, and that he always has a choice, and we all have a choice, and overall, like, pretty good themes. That movie has more action than the first one, which I do give it some credit for, although I feel like the original writers for these movies just really didn't do any research into the team whatsoever outside of the fact that they are a family. That's the one thing that I feel like they get right in these movies. But ultimately, they're just kind of boring because a family of superheroes aren't doing much superheroing. And they made Galactus a cloud. So there's that. Then we get Fan Forstic in 2015 or whenever it was. Holy crap. This movie is the epitome of dumpster fire. Nothing happens. The characters all feel like complete departures from their personalities in the comics. There's no redemption. This is actually the movie that sank Josh Trank's career. Nothing about it is good. I mean, I can't think of one thing about that movie that I actually enjoyed. I remember I paid for a ticket, went with some friends of mine. When we got up, I said, we just wasted our money. And the guy behind me was like, we sure did. And I think it's one of these in a vacuum Fox films that happened right up to the point that Marvel, well, Disney bought up Fox, right? So Marvel gets the rights back for those characters and X-Men and all of that. So, it was in that last wave of like, X-Men, Dark Phoenix, etc., Apocalypse kind of stuff where there was just like strangeness happening at that point. And overall, the movie's terrible. I think we all can agree there. So that leaves us with the current MCU slate, right? We have 4 projects coming out before the new Fantastic Four movie. We have Captain America Brave New World, we have Daredevil, we have Thunderbolts, and we have this Spider-Man show. We won't really talk about the Spider-Man show. It's animated. It doesn't actually exist within the MCU. It's just kind of its own deal. So let's just focus in first on Captain America Brave New World just for a couple minutes here. That movie, I would love for it to be good. I think that they're really pushing for it to feel like the Winter Soldier felt. And the problem is, I think there are a few problems at play with this film. It suffered from the strikes. It suffered from multiple rewrites. And ultimately, it suffers from Sam not having really earned the shield yet, in my opinion. This is obviously, my conjecture on Sam as a character. Within the MCU, I might add. As a comic character, I think that there's plenty of stuff that leads up to him getting the shield and earning the title of Captain America. And I think it makes a lot more sense than the way they did it in the MCU. The MCU, it just kind of feels, a little lazy to me. But I digress. Ultimately, we'll have to wait and see. That movie comes out February 13th, just a few, not even a few, like a couple weeks from now. So we're going to get to see that one really soon. I don't have much expectations. I'm having a hard time caring about it. It sort of feels like it's part of that wave of Marvel stuff that occurred, the past like 4 to 5 years where there's just kind of a lot of nonsense. There are a couple things in there that are like halfway decent, but overall, it's just kind of a lot of garbage and stuff that no one really cares about because they didn't really know where they wanted to take it. That's my thoughts on Captain America. So let's move on to Daredevil. Daredevil is good. I love that Jon Bernthal's back as Punisher. Love that Charlie Cox is going to be playing Daredevil. Love Vincent D'Onofrio. Love Vincent D'Onofrio that plays Kingpin. That guy's great. Super good as that character. It looks interesting, right? I think that there's a lot of fun stuff they can do there. I think that that's a great example of how you sort of diversify the MCU in terms of genre and feel, right? That's a much grittier, grounded take, but it can still exist within the larger MCU. And I think that they need to do more of that. They should do some horror stuff like that with Ghost Rider and Midnight Suns and Blade. Those should be darker, more horror-esque type films. Or shows, whatever they end up going with it. You kind of have your mainline MCU stuff that feels similar to how things felt all the way up to Endgame, etc. And I think that there's a lot of fun you can do with a lot of that. But I think that Daredevil does genuinely feel like a show that is going to exist within the MCU, but has its own gritty, dark feel. It looks like they actually stayed true to it being bloody and gruesome and violent and all those things that make Daredevil kind of just sick, honestly. So we'll see. But we get that in March, so that's just around the corner as well. That leads us to Thunderbolts. The idea behind Thunderbolts is great. Thunderbolts in comics are kind of a cool team. It's essentially Marvel's Suicide Squad. It's a team of anti-heroes controlled by a government entity, off-grid, whatever. It doesn't really matter. I'm just not going to lie. The trailers are not doing it for me on this one. I think that it just feels like a lot of cheese. It kind of feels like a frozen waffle that's been in the freezer for a little too long, got a little freezer burn on it, but you're like, I got to eat breakfast. So you throw it in the toaster, you may burn it. You might turn the heat a little too high. That thing might get real crispy, but again, you're like, I gotta eat breakfast, and you eat it anyway. That's how this movie feels to me. I'm gonna watch it. I think the only character in the entire lineup that's even remotely interesting to me at this point is U.S. Agent. Even Bucky, who he is a great character. He's historically been a really interesting character. The way that he was handled within Winter Soldier or Falcon and Winter Soldier, goodness gracious, trying to keep all this straight is insane. I think that the way that they handled his character there just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. He had kind of moved past a lot of the things that they were harping. It just felt weird and out of place, and I don't know, man. U.S. Agent was easily the best part of that Falcon Winter Soldier show. I wish that he had been the main antagonist for the entire duration of that show. I think it would have been a much tighter and a much better show. And Wyatt Russell is awesome as that character. It's so freaking good. So him as that character is, I should say. We'll just have to see, you know? We'll just have to see, but I don't think it's going to be good. I'd love for them to prove me wrong. All of this points to the crux of this video, which is this right here. I think Fantastic Four First Steps is the project that the MCU's success or failure is really going to hinge on moving forward. So I think it's the first project that they have coming out that's actually going to bear weight on all of the stuff that they've been talking about, you know, for the past, basically year now, with Avengers Doomsday, a little less than a year, I guess. Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars, right? We had to go back to the drawing board because of all the Jonathan Majors stuff with Kang, and that's just basically, you know, out the window at this point. So now we're going to be shifting to Doctor Doom, which I'm not even going to get into all the specifics with that. There are plenty of channels that do that. Like it, don't like it, doesn't really matter. It's happening, so that's what we've got to work with. But the team that they've set up for us, for the new Fantastic Four team, looks pretty solid. I like the talent that they've got. I'm particularly excited to see Joseph Quinn as Human Torch. I really liked that guy in Stranger Things when that was the first project I got to see him in. Thought his character was great. Leave it at TikTok to ruin a great character, but I thought that character was great while the show was going on before all the Eddie stands came out of the woodwork. But I think that they've got something cool on their hands. I've seen the Comic-Con leaked sort of concept footage. I loved the Jetsons futuristic 60s kind of feel that they've got going on with it. I think that they're getting the characterizations right. Pedro feels like he's embodying Reed really well, which is something that I know a lot of people were kind of on the fence about, myself included, mind you. But he's got such great range. I never really questioned whether or not he would portray the character well. It's more like, does he look the part? And I think that they've got that pretty much on lock at this point. There's a lot of fun stuff you can do with Reed, the Council of Reeds. Again, you can go watch other channels that talk about this stuff to get into the nitty gritty. What I would like to spend a little more time talking about here is the reason that they have to get this right. I mentioned before, I didn't care to watch Agatha, and I haven't watched the past 2 seasons of What If. And up to that point, I've literally watched everything, and everything multiple times. Went to the theater to see the Marvels, even though I knew it was probably going to be bad. I went to the theater to see Eternals. I went to the theater to see Thor 4, which, holy crap, good grief, and good riddance to Taika Waititi directing any Thor movie from now on. I've sat through a lot of this stuff, and even the things that I enjoyed in Multiverse of Madness, I recognize that film is not perfect, but I overall enjoyed it. All that to say, I have Human Torch and Doctor Doom tattooed on my right leg. I love this stuff a great deal. I really, really do. Here's the issue that I'm having. I've already said it multiple times in this video, I just don't care anymore. It's not just Marvel, it's Star Wars too, but we're focusing on Fantastic Four and why I think it has the potential to make me care again. This is an A-list team. This is a titular team that has always existed in Marvel Comics. It's not some, bunch of new characters that they're bringing in, which, by the way, Marvel made work in 2014 with Guardians of the Galaxy. This is a A-list team that holds a lot of weight in many of the comic runs, especially with characters like Reed Richards, right? You have a lot of rich storytelling potential with this group of characters. So they have to get this right. If they don't get this right, I fear that Marvel actually might be toast after that, because the reality is there's a lot of apathy already concerning a lot of these franchises that have kind of just, in a lot of people's opinions, overstayed their welcome. And we're at a point now where you're having to gain back some of that trust. Deadpool and Wolverine did that to an extent, and there's been multiple videos talking about why or why not Deadpool and Wolverine will save or hasn't saved the MCU overall, to the point where Deadpool himself says to Logan right at the beginning of the movie, you're entering it kind of, welcome to the MCU, you're entering at kind of a low point. That in that of itself is like, okay, like we're acknowledging, you know, that all this stuff has not been great. So I guess what I'm getting at is the things that are coming out this year, I think that specifically Falcon and Winter Soldier and Thunderbolts are two projects that have just been simmering there on the back burner, and ultimately they're just kind of like corroded at this point. Might have a little mold in them, honestly. But you know, they're going to feed them to us because they've just spent too much money cooking them. They spent too much money to not do it, so they're gonna release them. And the frustrating thing about that is it gets confusing for folks that aren't in the nitty gritty like a lot of us are with this stuff. Fantastic Four has to be the one to do it right. And it needs to be one of those films that really does set the stage for Avengers Doomsday and a lot of the stuff that's coming with a lot of that. Because at this current point, I couldn't really tell you what the standing is with Marvel and where all these characters are at and what they're doing. Like, Doctor Strange is off doing something. Nobody knows who Peter or Spider-Man is, so he's just, you know, doing Peter and Spider-Man things around Queens, I guess. That's what he's been doing. You know, I guess we're about to figure out what's been going on with Sam and Captain America, and probably Bucky, you know, to some degree with Thunderbolts. But the reality is the projects that they were in right before everything that's, you know, going to be happening with Doomsday, it's not been building the way that everything was building in, you know, the 2010s with all this stuff up to, you know, Infinity War and Endgame. So I think that Fantastic Four has got to be that project. It's got to be the one to do it, and it is a lot of that is because of the characters it's working with. This is these characters' first time in the MCU. You got to get it right. And not only do you have to get it right, it needs to be a home run. It needs to actually be really, really good, not just, you know, sort of like, yeah, that was all right. It was decent. There's too much of that right now. There's way too much stuff that's just like, yeah, mediocre crap. That's just like, it's not good, it's not bad. I think people are over it. And, you know, we're watching other things instead. So as a comic fan, as someone that loves these characters and superheroes, they're all over my, I love it. I love it. It's good stuff. It's fun. It's a lot of fun when it's done well. So Fantastic Four, it's got to be good. It's got to be done well. But what do you guys think? As always, just comment, you know, like, share the video if you think it was interesting, or if you think that someone that you know might have an opinion on this that I'd like to hear. I'll read the comments. I'll reply to a lot of them. Yeah, just let me know what you guys think about Fantastic Four First Steps. If you think I'm right about the MCU kind of hinging on this movie doing well, what do you think? Let me know.
What? Avengers! Flame on! Sorry, what now?